Hi, and welcome to what's going to be the first of a series of short webinars that will help us move into more dynamic teaching. And at the end of each webinar, I'm going to give you some ideas on how to use scaffolding techniques, which are ways to transition into new material, and our students feel more comfortable and less anxious that way. And you can find these scaffolding techniques in the book I just published called 101 Scaffolding Techniques. It's also just been published in Spanish. You can find it at Amazon.com and Amazon.es. These are ideas that I've been giving in conferences in Finland, in Mexico, in Brazil, and in Spain, where I'm based now. So I'm hoping to pass these on to you and help us all become incredible teachers, even more so than what we are right now. The first webinar is on physical environment and how we can make it comfortable for our students and still produce a lot of learning in them. So what we do first is I'm going to share the objective for this session, and it's also something that I encourage you to do in your classrooms. And if you can co-create it with your students, it works even better. It helps our students feel more empowered and willing to learn. So you may be wondering why this first image is of a horse and what these are. Well, these are called blinders. You may know that already. And what do? They mean the horse can't look left or right. It's not supposed to look behind, or it's only in front. And probably the poor horse has someone whipping him behind to go forward at their pace and not his. And so this next image, a little dramatic, I know, but it's of a student. Now, why do we have them next to each other? In most traditional classrooms, we don't let our students talk to their classmates. They're not supposed to know what they're doing. They're supposed to look at their books in front of them or at us. And this is not the best learning environment. We want to change this. It's a model that's been around for 100 years. A lot of you may think it started in the Industrial Revolution. You're partly right. It actually started before that with the Prussian king. The Prussian king wanted absolute control over his citizens, and his advisors told him the best way to do that was to start with the students, with the children in the schools. And they created this model that we still have today. Look at this, where the students are not allowed to move unless we give them permission. They have to read when we tell them to, do the math when we tell them to, etc. And most of these are routines. When the Industrial Revolution came along, the factory owners took advantage of this. You'll see it called cells and bells. It's a horrible way to think about school, but it's actually pretty true. The cells are our classrooms, and when the bell rings, either they change their task or they change the classroom. So again, when the Industrial Revolution came along, the factory owners thought, well, this is perfect. This works for us too. We want factory workers who will go into the factories and already be used to sitting for hours on end and not have liberty to do what they want and be used to routines, doing the same things over and over again. But even though some of our students may turn into factory workers, I think we want to let them have options in this. This is a wonderful quote. The worst case scenario is that in 10 years from now, we're still graduating kids who are perfectly prepared for the 1950s. And indeed, if you look into the classrooms, there are still so many teachers standing in front of their students and talking to them all day long. Now, asking them questions periodically does not count as a dynamic class. It just means we're letting them speak once in a while. I'm going to show you how we can, at least the physical environment, we can encourage more. So there's this wonderful architect named Prakash Nair who was designing the same traditional schools, rectangular buildings, rectangular classrooms. And one day he realized this was not necessary. Classrooms need to be welcoming, versatile, and send positive messages about activity and behavior. And so he started creating classrooms, and you're going to be amazed at these, that were colorful, that were comfortable, that let students sit where they wanted to. And we want to feel comfortable when we're studying. Why shouldn't our students? Again, look at these alternative spaces. And wouldn't it be nice if we had these in our classrooms, no? If you can't, if your school doesn't have the money for this, there are alternatives. You can get stores to donate sofas. I had sofas in my classroom. I let my students sit on the floor with pillows. If they're comfortable, again, this has to do with classroom management, but if they're comfortable, they're going to learn more. You can have the high school students as well. You can also, the alternative is putting the desks in use, but I've seen a lot of teachers have their class in use, the desks, and also in group learning. but they're still in front of the class teaching all day long. So it's not just the physical environment, it's our methodology that has to change. And we'll go over that in the second webinar. And if you do something so simple as to put tennis balls under the chairs, you reduce a lot of the noise and everyone is happier. So that's just a little bit about physical space. Now, if I'm going too fast, it's because I'm a New Yorker and I get very excited and I speak fast, but I'm going to include the transcript of all this here so you can read it if you're a little bit lost. So now what we're going to do is do one scaffolding technique, and this is number 16 in either book, in the English or Spanish, and it's number 16 in the book, brainwriting. The difference between brainwriting and brainstorming is that in brainstorming, you're asking the students, who knows something about the Earth's axis, and who knows something about the winter solstice, and who's going to answer? The same students who always answer, right? And the same students who don't answer are not going to answer as well. With brainwriting, it's a little different. They have the chance to all, in their own pace, more or less, work on some ideas. So I'll show you how this works. We have a normal textbook. This is an Oxford book because I do a lot of work with Oxford. I'm very honored to be working with them. And for instance, in one of their chapters, they have the grammar focus is used to, another one is past continuous and past simple. We have some vocabulary that they're supposed to know in this chapter and some key phrases. So we're going to use this to do brainwriting. And how does this work? Well, you put the students into groups, either comfortable or not on the chairs, and each of them has a piece of paper. So one of them on their piece of paper puts, I used to, I didn't used to. Another one puts on their piece of paper, past simple and past continuous. The third student writes sentences, and you put these on the board, you write the vocabulary there. And the fourth student will describe a specific time using the past condensed, I used to. And then what happens? Well, first, you give a signal, and students have 1 minute to write anything they know about the topic they have in their heading. So in 1 minute, this student will write all the sentences that she or he can on I used to, I didn't used to. This student is going to write anything on the past continuous and past simple. I was listening to the radio when I heard the phone ringing. The third student, at the same time, in this 1 minute slot, is going to write any sentences with these vocabulary words. If they don't know them, that's okay. They probably will know at least one. And the fourth student will use sentences people used to, at that time, it didn't become, etc. These are the phrases, if you remember, from the chapter. What do they do next? Well, after 1 minute, you give the signal, and the students, again, pass their papers to the person on their left. And then you give them another signal, and they have 1 minute more to write anything on the new topic they have in front of them. So you do that 4 times. You continue the process until all the students have added comments on the piece of paper. In their groups, they take turns reading these papers, and they write 1 to 2 sentence summaries on each of them. So now we're synthesizing the information, which is very important. All right, and then you have the recorders. Each of them has a task. The recorders will write these 1 to 2 sentences, and the reporters will share the summaries with the rest of the class, and they can give little critiques on their summaries. So there you have the brainwriting. And why does that work? The studies show that this reduces a lot of the stress, especially for your shy students, the ones less confident in another language or in the majority language. And you give the students time. They can also read what their classmates have written, so it'll jog their memory a little bit about what the topic is. Everyone is happy, and you produce learning. So that's my first scaffolding technique. And now for feedback, formative assessment is very important in our classroom. How often have you gone home and thought, I taught the best lesson in the world, and then you realize that nobody learned what you were teaching? So we need feedback all the time, and I'm asking you for feedback. Please tell me what you thought of the webinar. Please tell me any points that you remember so I know that you've been listening. And you can include this either in my Facebook page or in my LinkedIn page. I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to seeing you in my next webinar. Today we worked on physical classrooms, and next time we're going to work more in methodology. So again, to all you super teachers out there, I look forward to seeing you with the rest of the series. Bye.